Do not panic. It is not too wretched for radio, but it might be in one sense. This is Wretched Radio sitting in studio. Normally we record Too Wretched for Radio from afar. It's a long distance sort of affair. But today, Phil Johnson joining us in studio. Brace yourself for some genuine toxic masculinity. You ready to go, Phil?
I am ready. I am toxic.
Well, according to Brown University, sir, you are. I would like to dive in with you as our special guest from Grace to You, Phil Johnson. Also, make sure you get plugged into his sermons. If you want to get fed richly, Grace Life Pulpit. Grace Life Pulpit. Is it .org or .com?
You know, I don't know because I don't run that website. So, but you can Google my name and the word sermons and it'll all come up.
All righty. So Phil Johnson's sermons, always worth the effort and the time. We always love to travel with you. Whenever we go on the road, it's like, it's Phil time. And I've just been told it's .com. That is a crack research staff we've got going on right here. GraceLifePulpit.com. Phil, you would be considered toxic masculinity. You were the one who showed me this article, and it is rare. Typically, when preparing for Wretched Radio, I'll go through an article, and this, that, 7 paragraphs later, that's of interest, that's helpful. Every single sentence of this was sad to me.
Yeah.
Just absolutely sad. All right, so I'm going to just share some points from the article, and I want you to comment, because I think there's more going on here than what meets the eye, and it can be instructive for us in our current culture of having conversations about intersectionality, oppression, critical race theory. It is all wound up in this article from thecollegefix.com. The Ivy League institution, Brown University, quote, "Rigid definitions of masculinity are toxic to men's health." And so they've got a brand new program called Unlearning Toxic Masculinity.
Indeed. What do you say to that? I don't know.
How's about we just sit here and weep?
Yes, well, it would be helpful if they described, specifically what they're talking about as toxic masculinity. But my distinct impression is that anything that is masculine as opposed to effeminate, they're going to say that's toxic.
I say this goes back to the Enlightenment era, because this was so much of what we're seeing in our culture today is in response to the Enlightenment era. I mean, They're probably not even aware of it, but that's the progression of things, the whiplash from we men, we know the truth.
Right.
Well, we started to discover maybe we don't, and so the postmodern movement started saying there is no truth. And it was a deconstructing of all of the institutions, and the institution that was predominant was the white European male philosophers. So all of that they wanted to deconstruct, and that's what this is.
Yeah, well, plus there's this obvious campaign throughout our culture to eliminate any kind of gender differences.
Yeah, that too.
And make everything androgynous. And in order to do that, you have to attack anything that would be considered, instinctive masculinity, the natural drive that men have to be protectors and providers. You have to find ways to mock that, denigrate it, and label it toxic. And the effect is going to be a lot of effeminate men.
Yeah.
And you see that in our culture already.
I was just out cutting some lumber when I came into this article. Susan. And as I'm going through the article, it was just unbelievable what it is desiring to do. It is, so when I told Mrs. Friel, her response was, "Great, we're not safe. If this is how men are going to behave, being not masculine in any way, shape, or form, look out as a country. We got ourselves a dangerous situation to boot."
Yeah, that's right. And this is an institution of higher learning that is indoctrinating men, that somehow it's evil. I mean, this is a new morality, actually. They've thrown out the old morality and systematically attacked it, and now you've got a new morality which says anything that smacks of masculinity is toxic.
And that's what they get into. I'm going to read a little more for you. Hang in there. Men will often resort to violence to resolve conflict. Okay. Some guys do. I get that.
But that's not a universal masculine trait. There are lots of us I don't think I've ever, at least I haven't been in a fight since junior high.
That's just because you don't leave the office much. But if you did, you would Somebody would find you.
You know, you can ask anybody in my family or circle of friends, when was the last time he resorted to violence to solve it?
They never.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah, so this is this broad sweeping
Right, it's a caricature. This is a caricature of masculinity. They're going to pick out the worst things that characterize the worst men in our culture and try to portray that as endemic to all masculinity.
Right, in an effort to tear down masculinity, which tells me there's an agenda to this. That's more than just finding a safe space for people. All right, here's the article. Men will often resort to violence to resolve conflict because anger is the only emotion that they've been socialized to express. That's it.
I mean, that's clearly over-the-top rhetoric. It's just not true.
Okay, I got a question for you. How much phlegm you got going on there? Today.
My throat's
Where did
bad.
It is not. You were doing just fine.
Yeah, it's just, I need some Germex for my throat.
I can provide that for you just fine. All right. Here's from the website. Unfortunately, the way that young men are conditioned to view sex and their need to be dominant and have power, that's the oppression, that's critical race, all of it, over others also contribute to instances of sexual assault and other forms of interpersonal violence on college campuses.
Yeah, I mean, that's bad men. That's not all men. There are, instances where people sin, but I mean, women sin too. This is not a gender issue as much as it is an issue of twisted morality.
Okay, so what's behind? I mean, it's a caricature that straw man knock it down.
They're trying to take the characteristics of evil people and portray that as if those are actual characteristics of masculinity, when in fact that's not the case at all.
See, I think this is just a part of the feminization of America effort. I also think, now this is speculative, but this is not the end game. They don't want men to come to a safe place, which I'm not sure many toxic men are going to visit.
What they're describing there is actually a result of the decades-long attack on morality. Whereas if you went back a few decades, you'd find that people stressed manners. We talked about good manners, bad manners. Nobody talks about that anymore. This is not a case of masculinity expressing itself. This is a case of what they're describing are bad manners, and nobody likes to talk about good manners or moral principles anymore. We're supposed to have thrown out all the moral restrictions, but now they want good behavior. You can't have both. You just can't have both.
Well, you deconstruct morals and values, and then you've got to rewrite them.
Right.
And that's exactly what the problem with this is. They're just basically scrapping the book. I like to use the word deconstructing because I think it's so connected to postmodernism.
Exactly.
And so helpful. All right, hold on. To help combat that, the program promises to provide safe spaces for men to facilitate conversations to combat so-called toxic masculinity.
Yeah, the guys whose behavior fits what they've described already are not the guys.
We're safe space. Must have safe space.
They're not looking for
Or
a
club
safe
woman.
space.
I club woman or safe space. Give it to me.
Yeah. See, that caveman mentality is not looking for a safe space. So what they're going to get is all of the, all the men who are inclined to behave like sissies will go into this safe space and have conversations with each other. But the ones who are practicing bad manners aren't going to be affected by this, and they're going to laugh at it.
See, I think fellows who are more sensitive already are going to go because they don't like this so-called toxic masculinity, but I don't think that this is, I think, the front door to take them to another room, which is the pink room down the hall, to be promoting whatever form of sexuality you feel comfortable with.
Right.
This is degendering America. The program includes Masculinity 101. Actually, that was my second book. I wrote that one too, so there's a little copyright issue. Weekly discussion, group to unlearn toxic masculine forms, a masculinity storybook. That's one you could read to the kids. You could read that to the grandkids.
Yeah, well, I intend to look for a copy of that on Amazon.
Detailing struggles and triumphs related to toxic masculinity, and a video of conversations about masculinity issues. That is the battle cry of so much of what we're seeing in culture. Let's just have a conversation. The more we talk about it, the more you're going to listen. We don't want you to talk back.
Right. The conversation, I mean, this goes back years. It is postmodernism to talk about, well, let's have a conversation. But to them, what that means is I talk, you listen.
That's it. All right. So here's what we are going to do when we return on Wretched Radio. We are going to have a conversation. Yes.
You're going to talk and I'm going to listen?
We will, we will keep mocking this article. But in order for it to be somewhat profitable, as opposed to just kind of depressing, frankly, we're going to talk about what a real biblical man looks like with Phil Johnson. Grace to you on Wretched Radio.